My dear friend, listen to me and listen like your soul is leaning over the edge of a cliff, because what I'm about to say isn't entertainment, it's a lifeline. This is the kind of truth that shakes a person awake in the middle of the night. This is the kind of revelation that refuses to wait until tomorrow. Sometimes God doesn't tap you on the shoulder. Sometimes he snatches you out of danger like a parent grabbing a child before they step into traffic. Sometimes he lets the bullet fly just close enough that you feel the wind of it but not the wound. And that's exactly what happened to you. You didn't walk away because you were lucky. You walked away because heaven overruled the moment. You shifted like someone who had already seen the danger unfolding in another dimension. You moved with the quiet precision of a soldier guided by a commander you couldn't see. Your spirit reacted before your thoughts had time to panic. While others were still squinting at the atmosphere, wondering why it felt off guard, had already repositioned you 3 steps to the side, out of reach, out of danger, out of the enemy's line of fire. Something targeted you, but it could not touch you, because you, my friend, are a walking, breathing miracle disguised in ordinary skin. Before we go deeper into this revelation, I want to pause and honor you for being here. Your presence, your quiet support, your willingness to listen, none of it goes unnoticed. If this message speaks to your spirit in any way, drop 777 inches. The comments, not for hype, not for pressure, but as a simple way of saying, I receive this. Let it be a sign of alignment, awakening, and agreement. And stay with me until the end, so we can uncover why you are a walking miracle and how you just dodged a bullet as if it were nothing at all. First, beloved, chosen ones. Let me start here with no apology, no hesitation. You are not lucky. You are not standing here breathing, thinking, healing because the universe flipped a coin and it landed on your side. No, you are not the result of a near miss or a cosmic coincidence. You're the result of something far more deliberate, far more divine. You are a walking miracle. And I need you to let that settle in your spirit, not just your ears. I need you to understand what I mean when I say you're not just someone who made it through. You're someone who was moved through, protected through, carried through by hands not seen but always present. Because if the enemy had his way, if the setup had worked, if the weapon had landed, if the lie had stuck, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in this moment, in this mind, with this strength. And the fact that you are, it ain't luck. It's proof that your life is aligned with something greater than logic. You weren't saved randomly. You were spared strategically. See, most people think survival is about ducking quick enough. They think it's about instincts or reactions or being in the right place at the right time. But let me tell you something, you were in the line of fire. You were right there. Something had your name on it. Something was aimed at your mind, your spirit, your joy, your future. But when it got to you, it couldn't reach. Why? Because you're not living on the same frequency as you used to. You shifted. You elevated. You aligned. And that alignment, that divine synchronization with God's voice, with his timing, with his protection, that's what saved you. Not chance, not reflex, but the God who guides even your detours. Let me make it plain. You're not a survivor by accident. You're a survivor by design. And I know when you look at yourself in the mirror, you might still see the residue of battles you didn't sign up for. You may still feel the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest from seasons when you had to hold yourself together with nothing but prayer and grit. But hear me, that pressure didn't crush you. It clarified you. You are not lucky. You are proof that purpose trumps plots. You are evidence that calling overrides calamity. You are what happens when heaven refuses to lose. Let me say that again for the people in the back. You are what happens when heaven refuses to lose. You didn't just avoid destruction. You rose above it. You moved through a minefield with grace so smooth, folks thought it was easy, but they didn't see the spiritual reroutes. They didn't feel the divine hands pulling you out of places that looked harmless on the surface, but were toxic at the root. They didn't see the moments God closed the door and you cried not knowing he was blocking your assassination. You want to know why you didn't fall apart? Because your spirit is tuned to a frequency. Danger can't reach. The letter came, but it was stamped, returned to sender. The curse was whispered, but it got tangled in the silence. The trap was set, but the foundation shifted before you stepped. That's why you're here. That's why you're still standing. That's why the enemy is confused and heaven is rejoicing, because the hit was real, but your insulation was heaven sent. And what makes this even more powerful, what makes your survival so holy, is the fact that you weren't even aware of how close it came. You were walking through your day, adjusting your jacket, fixing your thoughts, and somewhere behind the veil, angels were blocking darts, spirit was whispering directions, and God was marking you as untouchable. You weren't lucky. You were led. You weren't overlooked. You were overshadowed by glory. And let me tell you why that matters. Because this world will try to reduce your testimony to luck. They'll say, wow, you got out of that one, like it was a fluke. But they don't know the nights you laid awake, praying with no words left. They don't know how many times your soul felt like it was hanging by a thread. They don't know that there were days you were drowning in silence and still you got up. Still you showed up. Still you smiled when hell wanted you hopeless. Still you walked like a storm hadn't tried to drown you hours before. That ain't luck. That's preservation. That's holy protection. That's purpose. Pushing you through things people would never survive. Because God didn't just protect your body, He preserved your mind. He guarded your soul. He refused to let the fire touch your identity, even when it burned around your circumstances. And now you're walking proof. You are the evidence that God builds altars out of ashes. You are the miracle that teaches people just because the arrow was fired doesn't mean it can land. Just because they wanted you gone doesn't mean you're going anywhere. Just because the enemy was loud doesn't mean he was in charge. Let that sit in your bones. You weren't lucky, you were covered. And when you finally understand that, when you stop calling divine strategy luck, something shifts inside you. You stop downplaying your survival. You stop minimizing your strength. You stop apologizing for making it. You stop carrying guilt for walking away while others broke under less. And you start living like the miracle you are. You start praising like someone who didn't just survive, but someone who got promoted in the process. Because when God spares you, He doesn't just leave you whole. It makes you wiser, sharper, lighter. He upgrades the internal while shielding the external. And that's what happened to you. You didn't walk away lucky. You walked away reborn. So no, you're not lucky. You're the reason the enemy had to rewrite the script. You're the plot twist that heaven designed. You're the miracle walking down the street that looks ordinary until you open your mouth, until you testify, until you praise with the kind of fire that makes demons nervous. You didn't just dodge a bullet. You became the proof that even if it's fired, it can't hit what's already been anointed. My dear friend, secondly, let me tell you something most people miss. When you survive an attack, when the thing that was meant to break you doesn't even scratch you, that moment doesn't just reveal your strength, it exposes their weakness. Let me say that again. For somebody sitting in silence right now, trying to make sense of why you were targeted in the first place. The attack wasn't just about hurting you. It was about testing them, and they failed. See, people assume that when the storm doesn't destroy you, it's because you were built tougher. And that's true. But there's another side to that truth. That same storm, that same bullet, that same betrayal, it also reveals how unprepared, how misinformed, and how arrogant the enemy was when they came for you. They thought they had you figured out. They built their strategy based on outdated information. They aimed at who you used to be, not who you've become. They calculated your steps using a version of you that no longer exists. By the time they fired, you had already risen. That's the thing they didn't expect. That's the part that shook them. That's what made their whole scheme collapse. Because nothing frustrates the enemy more than wasted effort. Nothing torments a hater more than seeing the trap they designed so carefully, so confidently, completely fail. You didn't just walk away from the danger, you walked away with data, with revelation, with knowledge. Because when a hit misses you, it still leaves fingerprints behind. And those fingerprints tell you something crucial they never knew. Your real strength? They never understood your current level. They never realized how far you've outgrown their reach. That missed shot, it became a spotlight. And that spotlight didn't just shine on your resilience. It exposed their ignorance. They underestimated your discernment. They underestimated your boundaries. They underestimated how much healing you've done in silence, in shadows, in solitude. They came for you assuming you were still soft, still fragile, still reactive. But what they ran into was reinforcement. They didn't realize you had been fortified by fire. They didn't see the prayer life behind your patience, the fasting behind your focus, the worship behind your wisdom, the self-control behind your silence. They came for a version of you that had already been buried. And now they're left holding weapons that don't work in this new dimension you live in. Let me put it like this: your survival embarrassed them because they were so sure this would be the moment that shattered you. They told themselves, this will be the hit that humbles them. But instead of you breaking down, you broke through. They wanted tears. You gave them truth. They wanted collapse. You gave them clarity. They wanted drama. You gave them distance. And that right there is what wrecks them the most. Because see, when you respond from a place of elevation, the enemy looks small. The lie looks loud. The scheme looks sloppy. And they realize not only did they miss, but they were never ready for the new you to begin with. Some people attack based on your past patterns, not realizing that spiritual growth makes you unpredictable. Some people launch accusations thinking you'll react the same, not realizing peace has taught you how to pause. Some people strike out of pride, not understanding that pride always makes you aim too low. And so when they miss, they're forced to face something terrifying. They are no longer a threat to you. Not because they didn't try, but because you're no longer accessible. You're not on that battlefield anymore. You've moved from defense to destiny. You've shifted from proving yourself to preserving yourself. And because of that, they can't reach you like they used to. The most dangerous realization for the enemy is not that you fought back, it's that you didn't have to. It's that your silence spoke louder than their strike. It's that your peace outlasted their plot. It's that you were so wrapped in grace, their best effort bounced off like pebbles on armor. That's what exposes them. That's what unravels their confidence. That's what sends them back to the drawing board, confused and bitter, trying to figure out how someone like you slipped through untouched. But here's the truth: you didn't slip through. You rose through. You ascended above the frequency where their weapons were even effective. You didn't survive because they failed. You survived because you no longer belong to the places where they operate, and now the whole scene is flipped. The spotlight is no longer on you being a target. It's on them for misjudging your covering, for misreading your calling, for miscalculating the cost of coming for someone who walks with God. So don't just celebrate your survival, understand what it exposed. It exposed their fear masquerading as boldness. It exposed their insecurity hiding behind fake strength. It exposed their need to control what they don't understand, and when they couldn't control you, they tried to destroy you. But even that failed. Because no one can destroy what God has already decided to elevate. So the next time you walk away from something that should have crushed, you don't just thank God for the protection, thank Him for the revelation. Because sometimes the miss tells you more than the hit ever could. And now you know. Not only are you stronger than they thought, you're smarter than they assumed, you're sharper than they imagined. And most of all, you're untouchable by anything that was built for the old you. Thirdly, we need to talk about something that may shake what you thought you knew. That danger you survived, it was never as powerful as it looked. It just sounded loud. It just felt big. It just wore a costume of fear. But underneath the noise, underneath the illusion, underneath all that spiritual smoke and psychological fog, it was hollow, inflated, overhyped. The truth is, some of the things you feared most were never real threats at all. They were projections, shadows, false alarms, wrapped in emotional intensity. And the reason it shook you so hard wasn't because it was strong, it was because you believed it was. You agreed with its size, you accepted its story, you surrendered not to the impact but to the image. But what you didn't know back then was that the real you, the elevated, spiritually aligned, God-centered you, was already operating in a realm where that threat had no power anymore. You just hadn't caught up to your new altitude. See, the enemy has always been in the business of exaggeration. He inflates the danger to shrink your faith. He magnifies the noise so you won't hear the whisper of God saying, keep walking. And when you don't know who you are in Christ, when you haven't yet recognized the spiritual armor you walk with, you'll mistake fear for fact, panic for prophecy, anxiety for discernment. But let me say this as plain and bold as I can, it wasn't that strong. That bullet that missed you, it looked deadly, but it was designed more for show than for strike. The betrayal that tried to knock you out, it had more bark than bite. The attack that had you sleepless at night, it relied more on imagination than impact. You were never really in danger. You were in deception, and that's what made it so hard to see clearly. Because fear doesn't need facts to function, it just needs your focus. And the moment you lock eyes with it, the moment you start measuring the mountain instead of measuring your God, the moment you start interpreting the situation through anxiety instead of authority, you begin to hand over your peace inch by inch to something that never had power in the first place. Let me give you the truth that flips the whole thing. Reality doesn't follow fear. Reality follows alignment. And once your spirit aligns with the truth of who you are, chosen, covered, redeemed, untouchable, until your assignment is complete, danger loses its teeth. It might still growl, it might still circle, it might still pretend to be lethal, but it cannot land, because spiritual growth does something the enemy hates. It exposes the bluff. And what looked like a trap, just a test of what you still believed about yourself. What looked like a prison, just a stage for a plot twist. What looked like a curse, just a classroom God used to teach you discernment. The closer you walk with God, the clearer you start to see what once intimidated you. You begin to realize that most of what you were afraid of didn't have structure, it had suggestion. It didn't have substance, it had staging. It was built to look dangerous, not to be dangerous. And that's how you got free, not by outrunning it, not by overpowering it, but by recognizing it for what it really was. Sometimes all it takes to break the fear is a pause, a breath, a moment of silence where you stop reacting and start discerning. You stop flinching and start watching. You stop spiraling and start standing. And in that stillness, you realize, wait a minute, that wasn't real. That wasn't permanent. That wasn't powerful. That wasn't from God. It was noise, not truth. It was drama, not destiny. It was theater, not threat. And here's the part that'll preach. When you stop giving exaggerated threats real access, they lose their momentum. When you stop feeding fear your focus, it dies from starvation. When you stop rehearsing the worst case scenario and start speaking life over your situation, you break the cycle of intimidation. Because intimidation only works on people who haven't remembered their identity. But when you remember you're a child of God, when you realize heaven's backing you, when you understand your spiritual authority, you don't run anymore. You don't panic anymore. You don't react on impulse anymore. You just stand in peace and let the storm prove it can't touch you. Because the more you grow in alignment, the more you realize you don't even have to fight some of these battles anymore. You just have to recognize they're not yours. You outgrew the battlefield. The enemy came for a version of you that second-guessed everything, that walked in guilt, that doubted your voice, that still needed outside validation. But that version has been buried. Now you operate from wisdom, from clarity, from stillness. You don't just respond slower, you respond smarter. You don't just avoid the attack, you discern the illusion. And because of that, exaggerated threats bounce off your purpose like rubber bullets hitting steel. You are no longer an open target. You are an elevated presence. And when elevation happens, the tactics of the old battlefield lose access. The storm still swirls, but your feet don't move. The threat still talks, but your spirit isn't impressed. The enemy still watches, but he doesn't know how to reach you anymore. And that, my friend, is why you didn't fall apart. That's why you didn't break down. That's why you're still here, still standing, still blessed. Because what looked like power had no permission. What looked deadly had no direction. What looked big wasn't even built to reach you. You weren't saved because the threat was weak. You were saved because you were strong enough to stop believing it was bigger than your God. So walk with your head high. Walk with your peace unshaken. Walk with the knowing that fear can only bluff for so long before truth walks into the room and shuts it down. Fourthly, my dear friends, let's talk about what they didn't see. They saw you walk out. They saw you survive. They saw you standing. But what they missed, what they couldn't see, was what it took to stay sane in a place built to dismantle you from the inside out. Because hear me, the real miracle isn't always that you escaped the fire. It's that you didn't lose your mind in the smoke, that you didn't let the heat bend your identity, that you didn't let the pressure collapse your clarity, that somehow by grace, by grit, by God, you kept your head when the enemy came for your soul silently, slowly, systematically. See, some environments don't kill you with violence, they wear you down with atmosphere. Some battles don't announce themselves, they hide behind patterns that numb you, confuse you, gaslight you, and make you second guess your worth day after day after day. It's not always a war with weapons. Sometimes it's a war with whispers. And that's why I say, sanity is the miracle. Because the place you came out of was designed to erase you not with one blow, but with 1,000 small erasures. With silence when you needed affirmation. With manipulation when you craved honesty. With subtle neglect dressed up as loyalty. With expectation without empathy. With pressure without protection. You were expected to function while being spiritually suffocated. You were expected to serve while being emotionally starved. You were expected to smile while your soul was being drained dry, and yet you're still here, clear, awake, rooted, breathing. That's the miracle. Not that you escaped the chaos, but that you didn't become it. You didn't become bitter when betrayal crept in. You didn't become vengeful when lies surrounded you. You didn't become numb when love turned conditional. You didn't become cold when truth became costly. That's spiritual strength. The world can't measure. That's divine resilience. Hell didn't prepare for, because the enemy's real weapon wasn't a bullet. It was confusion. It wasn't meant to strike you. It was meant to subtly separate you from yourself. Little by little. One compromise here, one identity slip there, one numbing day followed by a forgettable night. He wanted to turn you into a ghost while you were still alive, walking, working, nodding, functioning, but disconnected, disoriented, detached. But even when you couldn't articulate the battle, something in your spirit refused to let go. Something holy held your ground. Something sacred whispered, "This isn't who you are." Something eternal reminded you, don't shrink, don't settle, don't disappear. And that's what I'm here to tell you today. You didn't lose yourself. You may have been lost in it for a moment, but you weren't lost to it. You kept your voice. You kept your values. You kept your dignity when it would have been easier to dissolve into the noise. You didn't let toxicity rewire your character. You didn't let culture rewrite your calling. You didn't let the abuse of power reshape your posture. You didn't let rejection rename your worth. You stayed. You watched. You endured. You wept. But you didn't vanish. And now you carry something deeper than survival. You carry sacred memory. You remember what it feels like to almost forget who you are. You remember how the fog set in quietly, gently, convincingly. You remember waking up and feeling like a stranger in your own story. You remember thinking, maybe this is just who I am now. But then something shifted, something reawakened, something holy stirred. And that something was God reminding you that you still belong to Him, that your identity was not up for negotiation, that your mind was not available for destruction, that your name was not on the list of casualties. Because God doesn't just rescue bodies, He rescues clarity. Eresquis truth, eresquis identity. He brings you out with your vision, restored your purpose, recalibrated your mind, realigned to the sound of heaven again. And now you walk different. Not just because you survived, but because you remember how close you came to forgetting your name. That's why you protect your peace like it's sacred, because you know what it's like to almost lose it. That's why you pause before you respond, because you know what it's like to let the wrong energy steer your reactions. That's why you guard your spirit, because you know how long it took to get back to yourself. And now that you're back, now that your mind is clear, now that your soul is awake, you don't just walk out of the storm, you walk out as a revelation. You become a living, breathing contradiction to the chaos you were immersed in. You become proof that a person can stand in a collapsing environment and not collapse with it. That a person can walk through gaslighting and not become a lie. That a person can be betrayed by people they loved and still choose love without losing wisdom. You become the kind of person hell regrets touching, because what didn't kill you activated something it can't control. Your discernment sharpened. Your boundaries solidified. Your prayer life deepened. Your vision got clearer. Not because you had all the answers, but because you stopped letting confusion write the script. You picked up the pen and said, "God, rewrite me." You asked for peace that doesn't come from absence of conflict, but peace that walks into conflict and doesn't flinch. You ask for clarity that doesn't depend on circumstances, but clarity that cuts through chaos like light through fog. And God gave it to you. Not all at once, not in fireworks, but little by little, piece by piece, day by day. And now you're still standing. But more than that, you're still thinking clearly. You're still feeling fully. You're still showing up without apologizing for your light. That, my friend, is the miracle. Not just that you came out, but that you came out whole. That you came out wiser, not just wearier. That you came out with your identity intact and your eyes fixed on heaven. So the next time someone says, "You're so strong for making it through that," you say, "No, I'm blessed because I didn't let it steal my mind." Because in a world that wants to distract, distort, and disorient you, clarity is warfare. And keeping your soul rooted in truth, that's the kind of miracle hell can't explain. Fifthly, O chosen ones, listen to me. That attack didn't miss you because you dodged it. It missed you because you no longer live where it was sent. That trap, that betrayal, that emotional bullet, it was fired at the version of you that no longer exists. It was crafted for a timeline, a chapter, A season you have already outgrown, and what almost hit you. That was nothing but delayed warfare aimed at the old address of your soul. But you've moved, you've shifted, you've evolved. And that near miss, that wasn't coincidence. That wasn't lucky timing. That was confirmation. It was heaven's receipt that says, this no longer belongs to you. You are not who you used to be. You don't think the way you used to think. You don't react the way you used to react. You don't return to what you used to tolerate. That's why the old drama doesn't affect you the same. That's why the same lies don't trigger you. That's why the same people can't pull you back. Because you're no longer accessible to what was designed for your former self. See, spiritual growth isn't just internal, it's dimensional. It relocates you. It recalibrates your coordinates. It rewrites your energy. It changes the rhythm of your responses and the pattern of your presence. So when the enemy launches something expecting you to still be in that same spot, you're gone. The space you used to stand in, it's been filled by discernment. The mindset you used to operate in, it's been upgraded by wisdom. The trap that used to ensnare you, it now looks obvious amateur beneath your calling. You're not just wiser, you're no longer in the room. You're not just stronger, you're no longer on the battlefield they trained for. The fight was scheduled for a previous version of you, but you've already broken contract with that timeline. The danger came looking for the you who still needed approval. The you who still chased validation, the you who didn't know your worth, but that you has been buried in resurrection does not answer to graves. It's already walked out of. That's why the hit missed. That's why the attack failed. That's why the plot crumbled. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was too late. That threat was designed for who you were, not who you are becoming. And listen to me, every time God upgrades your identity, He voids access from anything that was allowed to reach the old you. So yes, the storm came. Yes, the enemy showed up. Yes, the pressure got close. But none of it could locate you because God had already relocated you. And I know it felt close. It felt heavy. It felt like something almost broke. But almost doesn't mean damage. Almost means divine distance. That's the grace. Nobody talks about the grace of the almost lost it, but didn't. Almost gave up, but didn't. Almost fell back into old cycles, but stood still. Almost responded like you used to, but walked away with silence. Almost got dragged into what you already graduated from, but chose peace over pride. That's not weakness. That's evidence of transformation. And that transformation has caused your timeline to shift. You're not repeating circles anymore. You're not stuck in generational dysfunction. You're not responding to the same bait. You've stepped out of the storyline that hell thought it had rights to. And now when the devil sends an attack, it reaches the scene, but the character he was targeting has already left the script. You don't live there anymore. You don't dwell in that insecurity anymore. You don't inhabit that fear anymore. You don't reside in that shame anymore. You've changed realms. You've changed rhythms. You've changed roots. And you can tell because the attacks feel familiar, but they land different. They feel outdated. The energy feels off. The aim feels off. The whole thing feels like someone knocking at a door that doesn't belong to you anymore. That's because you've moved. And now that you've moved, the enemy is confused. The people who used to trigger you are confused. The patterns that used to hold you are confused. Because elevation makes you unrecognizable to the systems built to trap you. They set it all up expecting a reaction, but your silence rattled them louder than your scream ever could. They came expecting the old version of you to fight for your spot. But your peace said, I've already outgrown this level. They aimed where you were, but not where you are. They strategized for your shadow, not your spirit. They rehearsed for your history, not your healing. And that's why you don't have to apologize for walking away calm. That's why you don't owe anyone an explanation for staying quiet. When drama calls your name, that's why you don't have to attend the funeral of who you used to be. Because growth is loud in heaven even when it looks silent on earth. And your growth has moved you beyond their reach. You're not better than them, you're beyond where the trap was meant to work. You're not arrogant, you're aware. You're not cold, you're called. You're not afraid, you're awakened. And once you're awakened, the enemy has a hard time finding you because people can only target what they can access. The devil can only destroy what he can locate. But when you change timelines, change atmospheres, change identity, your location becomes encrypted in glory. You become invisible to what used to intimidate you. You become untouchable to what used to tempt you. You become unreachable to what used to define you. So don't be discouraged by the near miss. Don't question the reason it came so close. Don't shrink because of the intensity. Celebrate the proof of your progress. The hit didn't land because you've already left the place it was aimed at. You are no longer in the dimension of damage. You are no longer in the shadow of who you used to be. You are no longer in the storyline written by fear. You are now fully seated in the timeline written by grace. And in this timeline, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, not because they aren't real, but because you've been moved to a level where they don't apply. So let that almost remind you of the power of distance. Let that close call be your confirmation. You didn't dodge it because you were fast. You avoided it because you were gone. That's not survival. That's ascension. That's not reflex. That's relocation. You're not who you were. You don't think where you used to think. You don't walk where you used to walk, because, child of God, you don't live there anymore. Sixthly, now I need you to understand something powerful, something that might explain what you never saw coming but also never had to face. You've been protected from more than you know. You've survived battles you didn't even realize you were in. You've walked away from conversations you thought were casual when they were actually crafted to confuse you. You've left rooms early where the air turned heavy and didn't know why your spirit felt tight, but you listened anyway. You said no to some opportunities that looked golden on the surface, but something deep in your belly, something formless, wordless, holy said, not this one. And here's the truth. You didn't know you were being saved from something you never saw forming, because some of your greatest victories weren't loud, they weren't explosive, they weren't broadcasted in a highlight reel. No, they were quiet victories born in the deep place where your spirit and the Holy Spirit meet in silent agreement. And in that place, spiritual precision goes to work. Let me tell you something. We serve a God who moves with intention, not reaction, not guesswork, not probability. Precision. God doesn't just protect what you see. He protects based on what he sees. He doesn't guard you according to your plans. He guards you according to his foresight. That's why you didn't know about the trap, but you didn't fall into it. That's why you didn't hear the conversation, but your name was kept out of it. That's why you didn't feel the betrayal, but the connection ended before it got deep. Not because you saw danger, but because your spirit intercepted it. That's the real protection. That's divine accuracy. That's spiritual radar. See, we always thank God for what he brought us out of. But when was the last time you praised him for what you never had to enter in the first place? You don't even know the number of text messages you didn't receive because someone erased your name. You don't even know the number of phone calls that never rang because the line was divinely blocked. You don't even know how many places the enemy prepared for your destruction only to find you had already been rerouted. Not by fear, not by luck, but by intuition sharpened through intimacy. And I know people around you didn't get it. They said you were being paranoid. They said you overthink. They said you were too sensitive, too reserved, too careful. But But hear me, sensitivity is spiritual currency. Discernment is survival, and your ability to feel the invisible has saved your destiny from being detoured. Because not every danger looks dangerous. Not every blessing is really from God. Not every smiling face is safe. And not every opportunity is aligned with your assignment. But here's what they didn't see. Your spirit knew when to go silent. Your spirit knew when to change the subject. Your spirit knew when to walk away mid-conversation with no explanation. You didn't have the full facts. You didn't have evidence, but you had peace that felt disturbed. And when you're in tune with the Holy Spirit, peace becomes your compass, not your comfort zone. Let me say that again for someone who's been questioning their decision. Peace is not always comfortable, but it is always clear. And when it lifts, don't stay. When it shifts, don't explain. When it warns, don't debate. Because sometimes God will make you uneasy before he lets you be unsafe. He will stir your rest before he allows the enemy to strike. He will send discomfort into your spirit as a signal. I'm shielding you from something you can't see yet. And your job is not to argue with the warning, but to trust the radar. That's spiritual maturity. Not how loud you pray, but how deeply you respond when God says nothing out loud, but everything inside. And let's be honest, some of the best decisions you ever made didn't come from facts. They came from feeling. Some of the most powerful exits you ever made weren't logical, they were led. You didn't know what was wrong, but you knew something was. You couldn't explain it, but you couldn't ignore it. That's divine precision. That's heaven editing your story before hell can write its next paragraph. That's grace closing the door before the snake slithers in. So no, you're not lucky. You're covered by intelligence beyond your awareness. You've got an early warning system built into your spirit. God doesn't wait for you to see the fire. He teaches your soul to smell the smoke. And while other people are still debating whether the room is dangerous, your spirit has already left the building. That's why you're still here. That's why the worst didn't happen. That's why your peace is intact. Because there's a hand on your life that doesn't just fight for you, it fights ahead of you. Before the conversation starts, God filters it. Before the decision is made, God weighs it. Before the connection deepens, God discerns it. That's why some people left and you never got closure. Because closure was protection, and if you had waited for an explanation, you would have still been vulnerable. Sometimes God closes a door so fast your feelings don't have time to argue. That's not rejection. That's rescue. That's spiritual precision. That's God canceling the appointment the enemy set for your downfall. You don't need to understand everything to trust the God who sees everything. So if you feel something shift in your spirit, don't explain it away. If the peace leaves a conversation, exit gracefully. If a door that looked perfect shuts without warning, thank him like you just avoided a trap you never saw coming. Because you probably did. And that's the miracle, that you don't even know how many attacks didn't happen because you listened. You don't know how many breakdowns you avoided because you didn't override the warning. You don't know how many spiritual assassins backed off because they couldn't read your spirit anymore. You don't even realize that your energy changed so much. Some people couldn't fake the connection like they used to. That's what spiritual precision does. It makes you unpredictable to the enemy and untouchable by manipulation. So the next time someone asks, "How did you know?" you tell them, "I didn't. But my spirit did." And that was enough. Because when you're walking with God, your discernment becomes a shield. Your stillness becomes your safety. Your intuition becomes intercession, and your hesitation. It's often the Holy Spirit putting his hand on your shoulder and saying, "Wait, not here. Not now. Not this." That's not fear. That's favor functioning in silence. And I want to honor that in you today. I want to honor the version of you that listened to the quiet. No. That obeyed without proof. That walked away. Without closure. That stayed silent when provoked. That delayed when rushed. That paused when everything screamed, "Go." That version of you is why the enemy failed. before the battle began. That version of you was protected before you knew. Seventhly, beloved chosen ones, do you know you were not saved because you were lucky? You were not spared because the danger was weak. You did not walk away because the world decided to be kind that day. No, you are still here because your assignment is not finished. And when you carry an assignment from heaven, nothing on earth and nothing crawling beneath it has the authority to stop you before your appointed time. That bullet you dodged, that betrayal that missed its mark, that trap that collapsed right before you stepped into it, it didn't fail because it was soft. It didn't fail because you were fast. It failed because destiny overruled it. You didn't survive by accident. You survived by alignment. Your life is running on divine schedule. Your breath is tied to purpose. Your days are connected to work God still needs you to do. Let me say it like this. Purpose rejects premature endings. When God has called you, crafted you, and commissioned you, death cannot touch you, danger cannot find you, and the enemy cannot finish you, not until heaven says, well done. You are not here to simply exist. You are here to fulfill, and until fulfillment shows up in the physical world, every attack against you becomes nothing more than wasted ammunition. That close call didn't expose your fragility, it exposed your assignment. Because if your life had no meaning, the enemy wouldn't be so determined to end it. If your calling had no impact, darkness wouldn't try so hard to silence you. If your voice had no power, hell wouldn't tremble every time you open your mouth. You are dangerous to the darkness simply because you have not finished the work you were born to do. And I know there were moments when you felt empty, moments when you felt insignificant, moments when you wondered if your life mattered at all. But the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still walking, still rising after everything that tried to bury you, that's your evidence. God kept you alive because somebody needs what you carry. Somebody needs your wisdom. Somebody needs your strength. Somebody needs your testimony. Somebody needs your light. Somebody's breakthrough is connected to your existence. So no, the attack didn't miss because you were strong. It missed because your purpose refused to die. Purpose is a shield. Purpose is armor. Purpose is divine interruption in the face of destruction. And when purpose steps in, everything that was meant to take you out gets placed under arrest. That's why you survived the heartbreak. That should have broken you. That's why you survived the trauma that should have shut you down. That's why you survived the depression that tried to suffocate your joy. That's why you survived the loneliness that clawed at your spirit. You survived because heaven whispered, not yet, not now, not them. There are doors you haven't walked through. There are people you haven't impacted. There are prayers you haven't prayed yet that will unlock deliverance in someone else's life. There are lives waiting for the version of you that is emerging right now. And that's why the bullet couldn't end you. Your story still has chapters left. You may not feel like the hero of your story. You may feel worn, tired, discouraged, uncertain. But hear me, God does not keep what He does not intend to use. If you were done, you'd be gone. If your mission was over, your breath would be too. If your purpose were complete, your journey would be finished. But you are here, and your survival is the announcement that your destiny is still unfolding. Maybe you didn't see the value in your own life. Maybe you underestimated your own strength. Maybe you forgot that you are chosen. But heaven didn't forget. Heaven didn't underestimate you. Heaven didn't lose sight of you. Heaven didn't let your story end halfway through. The enemy tried to close the book. God took back the pen. You think you're just living day by day, but you're actually moving chapter by chapter toward the fulfillment of something eternal. That attack, that moment, that close call that rattled your soul, it wasn't the enemy almost winning. It was God reminding you you are alive because I am not finished with you. Your assignment is the reason you're still standing. Your assignment is the reason you still wake up. Your assignment is the reason you still fight when everything in you wants to give up. Because deep down your spirit knows what your mind sometimes forgets. You were made for more. You were crafted for impact. You were built for transformation. You are carrying something sacred that hell cannot steal. So hear me. Lean in. Breathe this in. Your survival is not a coincidence. It is a calling. Your continued existence is not random. It is a requirement. Your life is not spare change in the pocket of the universe. It is intentional design. And until your assignment is complete, until the people tied to your purpose are touched, until the words God placed inside you are spoken, until the light inside you reaches the darkness you were born to confront, you will not be taken out. Not by bullets, not by betrayal, not by fear, not by failure, not by anything less powerful than God Himself. So walk forward with confidence. Walk with authority. Walk like someone who knows I am still alive because God still has work for me to do. Eighthly, O chosen ones, let's go deep together because this is where the unseen work becomes visible. This is where the Nirok myth stops being just a story and becomes your upgrade announcement. Too many people see a close call as a narrow escape. They say, wow, you almost died, and then they move on. But you listen, you almost became unrecognizable. Because each time danger slid past you, what was actually happening was this: your spirit was being sharpened, your spine being stiffened, your identity being refined. The bullet missed, but you didn't just breathe again, you were recalibrated. See, danger has a way of running tracks on our lives. It plays over and over on the old loops we still live in. It aims at who we were, not who we're becoming. And every time you avoided that trap, every time you sidestepped that betrayal, every time you walked away from that relationship that should have ruined you, you gained something. Nobody applauds, but heaven records. Your instincts got sharper. Your borders got higher. Your soul got deeper. Allow me to paint it. Imagine walking through a jungle built out of your past mistakes, the lies you believed, the identities you lost. In that jungle, traps are hidden under leaves. The snares are invisible wires. A bullet can come from a direction you think safe. The world applauds the one who survives the explosion, but you walked through and felt nothing hit you. They say you lucked out, but really you were upgraded. Your reflexes changed. What once would have startled you now just makes you pause. What once would have dragged you into drama now just shows you clarity. What once was a catastrophe for someone else becomes a sign for you. Another level unlocked? Let me say this. It's not the number of times you escaped that matters. It's the distance you walked from the point of aiming. The attack didn't miss you because you moved quickly alone. It missed you because you moved differently. Your frequency changed. Your position changed. Your arena changed. And every time that happens, you're upgraded. Not in flashes of fireworks, but by the quiet refinement of your character. The quieter the change, the louder the upgrade. Some of you remember the old you doubting, reacting, rushing, but that version would have been hit. That version had access holes. That version walked at the pace of self-defeat, but you don't live there anymore. Your upgrade happens in the hidden hours, in the nights when you didn't sleep because your heart was wrestling with truth, in the mornings when you chose stillness instead of chaos, in the conversations you didn't have because you heard a whisper inside, not now, in the exits you didn't explain, in the boundaries you finally enforced. That's where the refining took place. Let's be precise. Danger doesn't make you strong. Refinement makes you strong. The explosion doesn't produce power. Transformative escape produces power. You didn't just avoid the bullet, You became the target that the bullet could never aim at again. Think of your last close call. Remember how you walked away. Did you carry the same fear? Did you carry the same reaction as you would have before? Probably not. Because you didn't just survive, you leveled up. You walked faster, steadier, quieter. You didn't sprint, you glided. You didn't panic, you strategized. You didn't explain, you trusted. And that's the mark of someone refined, the mark of someone who's been through invisible fires and came out with a new blueprint. Let me tell you something. The enemy wins more by little allowances than major explosions. He wins when you accept less than your upgrade. He wins when you survive, but don't evolve. But you're evolving. Yes, you got hit in the soul sometimes. Yes, you had bruises that no one saw, but each bruise got smaller. Each scar got hidden. Not because you became immune, but because you learned to walk so aligned that the hit either lost its aim or you were already gone. You're upgraded, not unhurt. There's a difference. Unhurt sounds like you never got hit. Upgraded means you got hit, you processed, you grew, and you walked out changed. Changed in your voice, changed in your posture, changed in your presence. People who once thought your weakness would kill you now see your strength and don't know what changed, but the enemy knows. The enemy sees the recalibration and tries again, but the target's gone. Don't minimize this. Don't gossip about this as if avoiding pain was your only victory. What you must own is the transformation that followed, because the world sees the rough escape. They don't see the subtle elevation. They see the hero. They don't see the armor forged in silence. And quiet armor hits bumps. Quiet armor drops. Comments that echo louder. Quiet armor sits in faith when the noise is high. Quiet armor doesn't prove perseverance. Let me ask you, what have you learned from your escapes? What now feels like second nature? Maybe you've stopped assuming kindness only. Maybe you've stopped assuming truth is loud. Maybe you've stopped assuming connection is safe. Maybe you've stopped giving your access without question. If so, that's the upgrade process in you. Your intuition works faster. Your emotions ride shotgun, not drive the car. Your peace rides the co-pilot seat. Your faith drives. This upgrade, this invisible strengthening, does more than protect you. It qualifies you for the next level, the next mission, the next calling, the next crowd, the next breakthrough, because the person you were is not equipped for what you're becoming. And the person you're becoming would have faltered if you stayed who you were. That's why you changed. That's why you escaped. That's why you were missed. It wasn't luck, it was growth in motion. When your attitude, your boundaries, your self-respect, your values all shift, danger becomes outdated for you. The same traumas, the same manipulations, the same voices they used to hit you. Now they echo, they bounce, they don't curse, they confirm. They don't break, they baptize. I want you to savor this truth. Every near-out miss is your upgrade ceremony. The pain didn't just pass, it refined you. The hit didn't land, it matured you. The puckered wound didn't scar, it signaled your reinforcement. You're not just walking away from the explosion, you're walking out of the blast zone altogether. You're still standing, yes, but more remarkable, you're standing elevated in purpose, elevated in discernment, elevated in peace. Let people remark, wow, you're still untouched. Correct them, no, I'm upgraded. Show them. The bullets changed lanes. Prove it. I changed domains. Live it, I don't exist where I used to. And the transformation. It's not about the absence of conflict, it's about your new reaction to it. Not about the wound, it's about the wisdom you walked away with. Not about the near or miss, it's about the new you. A lot of people fear the battle. You study the upgrade after the battle, you don't anticipate destruction, you anticipate designation. You don't fear the fire, you expect the refiner's yield. Let me close this with a charge. Celebrate the misses. Honor your escape. Respect your refinement. Claim your upgrade. Because the world records the shot fired. God records the transformation. You're not just still here. You're more here. You're better here. You're new here. And danger. What they aim for, you cannot reach who you became. You weren't just lucky you survived. You were updated. Ninthly, my dear friends, I want you to hear this, like someone calling your name from a rooftop in the night, because where you are now is not the basement where the enemy aimed. It's the balcony where only purpose meets you. You didn't just slip out of the way of a blow. You rose above the trajectory. You didn't survive by evading. You survived by elevating. Some folks spend their whole lives dodging punches, ducking storms, hiding behind walls that don't hold long. But you didn't hide. You didn't shrink. You didn't stay in the alley where the bullets fly low. You moved into a place where the bullets couldn't even aim. Here's a truth worth cheering. Low frequency attacks don't work on high frequency lives. You moved into a frequency, a wavelength, a vibration aligned with your calling, synced with your destiny. And that's why the arrows lost track. The manipulations no longer found a window. The jealousy no longer got a foothold. The gaslight no longer had a gas meter. You're not just inaccessible because you're clever. You're inaccessible because you are altitude protected. Think of it this way. In an old movie, they'd say they aimed for you, but then you'd see the hero rise, fly, land in a place where the villain's gun can't reach. That's you now. The people who plotted against you, they were aiming for ground level. They built their schemes in halls of gossip, envy, impulse, resentment. They thought you were living there. They came with the dust and the fumes, but you didn't breathe that air anymore. You left. You ascended. You move where the air is cleaner, where prayer is deeper, where peace doesn't feel like a lullaby, it feels like a fortress. Where the tricksters cannot track you because they don't know the elevation, and when you're at that height, you don't question the trajectory, you refuse the arena. You're at a height where the haters show up with slingshots and you're firing rockets. They're still shouting while you're still floating. You didn't ask for less battle, you asked for better ground. You didn't settle for less life, you insisted on your high life. And all because you discovered you don't live where you used to. You don't fight where you used to. You don't hide where you used to. You moved out of the zone of familiarity and into the zone of favor. Now let's be real. That move doesn't happen overnight. It's not a stunt. It's not a jump. It's a shift of mindset, a shift of identity, a shift of geography of your soul. It's stepping from the basement of your yesterday into the penthouse of your tomorrow. And once you step into that penthouse, suddenly the threats look tiny. The voices that used to rattle you now sound like static. The people who once pressed your buttons now can't find the remote. You became the altitude they forgot to account for. They calculated your reactions. They studied your weakness. They planned the hit. They rehearsed the betrayal. They expected you to still bleed where your wounds used to be. But you weren't there. You relocated. They pulled the trigger. The weapon misfired. Why? Because it was aimed at coordinates that no longer existed. Let me paint the picture. A sniper sets up in the valley. Target stands on high ridge. Bullet can't trace the path. Bullet drops short. Target watches. Sunrise. That's you. No, they didn't miss because they were incompetent. They missed because you were independent of their radar. Your presence changed. Your frequency changed. Your circle changed. Your heart changed. And yes, they wonder how you walked in so calm, how you answered with levity, how you bypassed the drama, like you had a VIP pass. It's because you're not in the same timeline. You're not in the same plane. The domain where they set their snares is a lower floor. They tried opening the door, but the doors moved. They tried hitting the switch, but the circuits changed. And guess what? The greatest thing about being unreachable, the enemy hates watching you stand untouched. Because when he aimed and missed, you didn't even flinch. When he plotted and failed, you paused and prayed. When he believed he'd finished you, God believed he'd only started you. You are the high ground. You are the vantage point. You are the future in rehearsal. So you don't fixate on what chased you, you fixate on what you walked into. When you used to live among the shadows, you noticed every dart, every whisper, every sideways glance. Now you live in the light and you see the dart before it forms. When you used to feel the sting, you responded from fear. Now you keep the posture of victory and he sees you, but he cannot reach you. When you used to fight from reactive mode, you fought from survival. Now you win from position. See, there's a difference between surviving and reigning. Surviving is avoiding the knife. Reigning is standing on the hill above the valley the knife was in. You are reigning. You are not just breathing. You are crowned. You're not just avoiding bullets. You're commanding them to miss. And that's the shift. That's the difference. That's the ascension. So don't be impressed that you escaped. Be impressed at where you escaped to. Don't just say, I got out. Say, I leveled up. Don't just say, they couldn't get me. Say, I'm no longer in their region. Don't just say, I survived the plot. Say, I outran the orbit. And when you walk into a room, even a room where the drama still lurks, you don't fear the tension. You transcend the vibration. You don't debate the noise. You displace the noise. You don't shrink from the glare, you reflect the light. You're not on the floor anymore. You're standing on the roof. And the shot comes, but you're already on the elevator going up to the helipad. That's the move of the spiritually aligned. That's your move. So stand up, not just tall, stand high. Remember, the architecture of your victory is built above ground level. Your strategy isn't dodge, it's advance. Your instrument isn't armor, it's altitude. Your defense isn't camera slow motion, it's cleared air and the beauty of living there. The enemy still comes, but you're just too far away. Let me leave you with this. One day the lost version of you will look at the present you and ask, how did you get above it? Answer, I stopped living in their zone. I stepped into my elevation. I claimed the summit. You didn't escape the battle by reacting, you transcended it by ascending. And that's not drama. That's design. That's not hiding. That's height. You're not just surviving the world, they can't even hit your floor because you live on the penthouse level of purpose. Tenthly, my dear friends, hear this like the ringing of a gong in the stillness of midnight. In the moment when everything around you was unraveling, you didn't react with fear, you responded with calm. You didn't scream, you stood silent. You didn't lash out, you lifted your spirit. And that, my friends, is more powerful than any explosion, because the world expects noise when danger comes. It expects panic, trembling knees, shallow breaths, racing thoughts. That's the predictable narrative. That's what people are used to seeing. But you broke the script. While others were falling apart, you stood together. While the storm was forming, you found your sanctuary. While doubt whispered in the hallways, you heard the still small voice saying, be still and know. Make no mistake, your calm was not a sign of ignorance. It was the sign of alignment. It wasn't that you didn't feel the pressure, it's that you recognized the pressure didn't have to define you. It wasn't that you didn't see the trap, it's that you already saw the exit. It wasn't that you didn't hear the noise, it's that you already heard the direction of the spirit. See, the enemy expected you to flinch. He expected you to correspond to the fear. He expected you to rally in panic, but you didn't. You posed, and in the pause, everything shifted. Let me paint this. Imagine a volcano ready to blow. People are running, crying, screaming, grabbing what they can. But someone stands on the ridge cool, steady, watching the smoke swirl with a gaze of trust. That person has the perspective of the mountain, the pause of the summit, and the storm can't intimidate him because he is above it. That person is you. Your calm didn't reduce the danger. It reduced the enemy's confidence because he couldn't figure out why you weren't vulnerable. He couldn't map the coordinates of your fear. He realized his tool was misdesigned. His script was obsolete. And that realization shattered his aggression faster than any victory you could shout about. Your stillness became the signal: I'm not reacting, I'm revealing. When you didn't run, you rerouted. When you didn't shriek, you declared. When you didn't collapse, you clarified. And for someone watching someone whose eyes were set on your downfall, they got more than a survival story. They got proof of your sanctuary, because your calm made them uncomfortable. It made the enemy worry. It made doubt slow down. It made confusion pause and ask, what is this posture? They're used to wild fight. They're used to visible damage. But you won the invisible war quietly. You didn't show the burns. You exposed the strategy. You didn't wave the white flag. You walked with the white horse. And here's what they don't tell you. Peace is the deadliest weapon you own. Not anger, not vengeance, not proving them wrong speeches. Peace. It dismantles the battlefield from within. Because when you respond from peace, you remind the enemy that you belong to a different kingdom. You redirect the conversation without saying a word. You turn the storm into background noise. You shift the terrain under the assault. I want you to remember this. The person who loses his mind loses his fight, but the person who keeps his mind wins his story. It's not how loud you shout, it's how firm your foundation. It's not how fast you run, it's how fixed your feet. It's not how many battles you survive, it's how many you win, standing still. And you stood, you stayed, you trusted. Let somebody ask you, why weren't you shaken when everyone else was panicking? You answer, because I've been shaken quietly for long enough to know the difference. And they'll nod, some in awe, some in offense, but the truth will resonate. Because your peace doesn't flatter. It fights. It doesn't hide. It holds. It doesn't wait for permission. It prevails. You walked into the room. When everyone else cleared out, you stayed. When everyone else fled, you whispered when everyone else screamed. And the result, the enemy had more fear of you than his weapon ever did. Because the thing they aimed at, it missed. And the thing they expected to break, it rose. Let me tell you something about posture. When you sit in the seat of peace, you don't have to argue your right to exist. When you walk in tranquility, you don't have to prove your strength. When you rest in the quiet, you don't need the spotlight. Your calm is your signature. Your composure is your badge. Your silence, it's your standard. And God, He watches you like the architect watching the building rise. He smiles at your stillness. He nods at your restraint. He hears the faint sound of your faith louder than the loudest voices. When you keep your calm in the chaos, you're not denying the chaos. You're diminishing it. You're not ignoring the pain. You're outpositioning it. You're not underestimating the storm. You're demonstrating the shelter. And someone out there needed that. Someone observed that. Someone believed in you when you didn't know someone was watching. Your calm revived them. Your silence encouraged them. Your refusal to collapse awakened them. And the enemy, he took note. He saw the quiet in your eyes. He felt the absence of your panic. He heard the lack of your reaction. And in his confusion, he realized, I have no coordinates. I have no map. I have no room. And that's victory. Victory doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'm seated. I'm secured. I'm still here. And here you are, still seated. anchored, unshaken, because you didn't fight with your fists, you fought with your faith. You didn't struggle with your flesh, you rested with your spirit. You didn't escape by sprinting, you endured by standing. This level of calm doesn't mean you weren't tempted to panic. It doesn't mean you weren't wounded. It doesn't mean you didn't bleed. It means you learned to walk in a way the enemy cannot follow. It means you saw the trap before it snapped and you chose to stay above it. It means you didn't win because you attacked, you won because you waited. Because waiting isn't weakness, waiting is wisdom in training. And your waiting, your watching, your stillness, they made the difference. So when they say you've changed, say yes. When they say you're cold, say yes. When they say you don't care, say yes. Because sometimes the flame looks like burning, and sometimes the flame looks like calm determination. And the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one who screams, it's the one who remains composed. It's the one who can breathe in the middle of chaos and still whisper, okay, I see you, God. That's you. That's your version. That's your victory. So walk into your day like the rain is pouring around you, but you carry an umbrella of worship. Walk into your crisis like the sirens are blaring, but your heart is tuned to the word. Walk into your conflict like everyone else is buzzing for a fight, but you're already seated at the peace table. And let the enemy know your calm isn't neutrality. Your calm is authority. Your silence isn't emptiness. Your silence is strategy. Your breath is your badge. Your poise is your power. Your stillness, that's your victory lap. Chosen ones. Next, let me shine a light on something most people never have the courage to face. When that attack missed you, when the bullet didn't land, when the trap didn't close, when the blow slid right past your destiny, it didn't just leave you unharmed. It exposed the room. It revealed the one standing near you but not standing with you. See, the moment the danger missed, heaven wasn't just protecting you. It was revealing what your eyes had been too loyal, too loving, or too hopeful to see. The miss wasn't just God blocking the attack. It was God pulling back the curtain, because that close call, that split-second escape, it turned into a spotlight that illuminated every hidden intention, every quiet wish, every secret resentment that had been sitting silently in your circle. And what shocked you wasn't the danger that came for you, but the faces that were disappointed it didn't succeed. Let's talk about them for a moment. The ones who acted surprised but weren't surprised enough. The ones who asked, "Are you okay?" with a tone that suggested they were more confused than relieved. The ones who lingered a little too long in the silence after hearing you survived. The ones who didn't congratulate you on escaping, they questioned how. Because deep in their spirit, they had already accepted your downfall. Some of them had already rehearsed their speeches. Some had already imagined their life without you shining next to them. Some had already started drafting the narrative they would tell others about your collapse. But God interrupted their storyline. And your survival didn't just ruin the enemy's plan, it ruined theirs too. See, people don't have to throw the stone to be guilty. Some are guilty simply by watching and waiting for the stone to land. Your near miss exposed the audience. There were people close enough to witness the setup, but far enough to pretend innocence. They didn't speak the lie, but they didn't defend you either. They didn't set the trap, but they didn't warn you either. They didn't attack your character, but they didn't protect your name either. And when the danger missed you, the mask slipped. Your escape didn't just save your life, it embarrassed their expectation. Listen closely. The attack didn't just show you your enemies. It showed you your almost friends, your conditional supporters, your silent spectators, those who clapped when you succeeded publicly, but clenched their teeth when you succeeded privately, those who only loved you as long as you were shrinking, those who preferred you wounded because healed you takes up too much space. The misfire, the failed plot, it exposed them all. Because people reveal more in your crisis than in your celebration. Anyone can applaud when you're glowing, but who breathes easier when you're breaking? Who prays sincerely when you're in danger? Who celebrates your deliverance without resentment? Who cheers not because they should, but because their heart is clean? Those are the real ones. You learn something sacred. Not everyone in your circle belongs in your destiny. Some were there because you made them comfortable. Some were there because your light gave them warmth. Some were there because proximity to you made them feel significant. But none of those reasons are enough for where God is taking you. And so God used the attack not to destroy you, but to filter you. Some people couldn't be removed by conversation. Some couldn't be removed by distance. Some couldn't be removed by boundaries. So God used a missed attack as a divine separator, because nothing reveals a heart like watching a miracle unfold in someone else's life. And your survival was a miracle, not because you slipped away, but because heaven stepped in. Your survival forced truth into the open. Some people suddenly grew quiet, not out of concern, but out of confusion. How is it possible they got out? How did the storm miss? How did the trap fail? Because they were counting on your collapse to confirm the story they'd been telling themselves about you. Your fall would have made them feel right about their jealousy. Your downfall would have justified their insecurity. Your suffering would have validated their bitterness. But your survival humiliated their expectations. Your survival preached a sermon. What God covers cannot be killed. What God lifts cannot be lowered. What God ordains cannot be touched. And the ones who secretly oppose you heard that sermon loud and clear. Let me tell you something. People can hide envy behind smiles. They can bury resentment under compliments. They can disguise competition as support. But they cannot hide their reaction when God saves you. Somebody in your circle flinched. Somebody sighed. Somebody paused too long before responding. Somebody gave congratulations with no conviction. Somebody looked like they saw a ghost because they saw the future. They feared you still standing. The miss uncloaked their motives. And now you know exactly who cannot walk with you into the next chapter. Your calling requires clean hands around you. Your purpose requires pure hearts beside you. Your elevation requires loyal spirits behind you. God didn't let the attack hit not only to save your life, but to save your future. Because imagine if the attack had succeeded. Imagine who would have spoken at your downfall. Imagine who would have pretended they cared. Imagine who would have used your brokenness to stitch together their own ego. But God didn't let the story end that way. He let the danger come close enough to expose the false ones, but not close enough to harm you. You were protected. They were revealed. Your life was preserved. Their intentions were uncovered. Your destiny was secured. Their dishonor was displayed. And now that you see clearly, you don't have to confront them. You don't have to fight them. You don't have to argue or explain. The revelation is the release. What God exposes, God removes. Who God reveals, God dismisses. What God uncovers, God uproots. And you walk forward lighter, wiser, freer, because knowing who is not for you is just as important as knowing who is. Your circle isn't smaller because you're failing. It's smaller because God is refining. Your standards aren't higher because you're arrogant. They're higher because your destiny is demanding more purity. Your boundaries aren't tighter because you're bitter. They're tighter because your elevation requires insulation. So bless the miss. Honor the escape. Thank God for the exposure, because without that attack, you would have kept feeding loyalty to disloyal hearts. You would have kept trusting people who were secretly hoping the arrow landed. You would have kept giving access to those unworthy of your future. But now you know, and knowing is mercy. The attack missed you, but the revelation hit you, and that revelation will protect your destiny more fiercely than any shield ever could. Twelfthly, listen to me. You didn't skirt the hit and pretend everything changed. No, you didn't survive because you escaped the strike. You survived because you rose above the strike's reach. See, there's a difference between being out of harm's way and being out of the target zone. Being safe is good. Being unreachable is something else entirely. And you right now operate from the realm of unreachable. You're not living where the bullets fly anymore. You're not speaking the language that the schemers understand anymore. You're not dancing to the rhythm the manipulator composed anymore because you moved. Something inside you shifted. Your frequency recalibrated, your spiritual altitude elevated, and in that elevation, the old weaponry lost its range. Here's what that means. The enemy aimed for ground level. They prepared traps for someone exhausted. They targeted someone predictable. They rehearsed for the version of you who still responded from fear, who still reacted from hurt, who still believed he was vulnerable. But God didn't upgrade your enemy. God upgraded you. So when the trap triggered, you weren't there anymore. When the betrayal came, you had already walked out the back door. When the weapon swung, you were already in the helicopter. And that's why they hit nothing but air. Because you didn't just dodge, you ascended. You're now on the rooftop when the shots ring out in the valley. You're in the penthouse when the storms rage in the basement. Your perspective changed. Your reach changed. Your response changed. The attack missed for the simple reason that you're no longer present where it was launched. You don't need to explain your survival. You need to explain your distance. Because brilliance isn't measured by the size of your scar. Brilliance is measured by the depth of the place you left behind. You walked out of the old you. You stepped off the legacy of pain. You left the battleground not because shock paralyzed you, but because your spirit leapfrogged it. You used to walk where the trash falls, where jealousy vapor rises, where envy sets traps in smiles. But now you walk where angels hover. You moved out of the low frequency scenery into a realm of high frequency purpose. And that move, it's invisible to people who didn't evolve. They still aim at the basement because they believe you live there. They still hammer the door of your old identity because they don't know you left the house years ago. So many of your close calls weren't just about the bullet missing. They were about your exodus from the paradigm that could hurt you. They were about the migration of your soul to the place where the old weapons can't function. Imagine a tsunami. It's powerful, but only at sea level. If you climb the cliff, the wave breaks beneath you. That's your elevation. Imagine a sniper firing at a target. The target steps into a glass tower mid-shot. The bullet misses by default. That's your move. Your survival isn't accidental. It's evidence of ascension. You didn't just keep alive, you became untouchable. That doesn't mean nothing tries. It means what tries now doesn't have the same impact. You didn't outrun the storm. You outpaced the storm's design. You didn't hide under the bed, you built a new house on the hill. You didn't just survive your history, you left the neighborhood. And to be honest, that's what unsettles them. The enemy keeps firing at the place you used to stand and wonders why the shots land in emptiness. The manipulator still writes the script of your downfall and wonders why you don't show up for the scene. They built their strategy on you being predictable. They banked on your old frequency. They assumed you were still accessible, but you moved. Your blueprint changed. Your inner GPS got upgraded. Your center of gravity shifted, and what used to work doesn't because you're playing on a different field. Your fight is no longer for survival, it's for revelation. Your focus is no longer competition, it's calling. Your reaction is no longer defense, it's destiny. You are working from a place where the only question is, what's next? Not how do I survive, because you've already survived. Now you arrive, and the best part, when they look at you and think you're lucky, they don't see the roadmap you walked. They don't feel the elevation you earned. They don't measure how far you rose. Let them underestimate. Let them imagine you're the same person you used to be, because now you're too far for their range. Here's what you must remember every single day. You left, the weapon stayed, the trap stayed, the hazard stayed, but you're gone. You don't need to outrun the bullet. You need to out-evolve the bullet's target. You don't need to dodge the storm. You need to rise above the altitude where the storm forms. You don't need to fight the same fight. You need to step into a battle the enemy hasn't planned for you, because the enemy's plans follow the map he knows. Your elevation redraws the map. So yes, you're still here. Yes, you still breathe. But notice how different you feel. Notice how you don't walk those old halls of accusation anymore. Notice how you don't sit on those benches of shame. Notice how you don't fight like you used to fight. You fight differently now. You don't just speak louder. You stand taller. You don't just react. You resonate. Because you're no longer on the floor where the arrows land. You're on the stage where the arrows are irrelevant. You aren't vulnerable because you're safe. You're untouchable because you're positioned. And positioning isn't just about geography. It's about identity. You changed zones. You changed echoes. You changed the energy. That's your elevation. And now the story of almost becomes the story of arrived. The story of what nearly caught you becomes the story of where you got to. The blueprint of your survival becomes the blueprint of your sovereignty. So walk through your day like you've already outplaced the plot designed to take you out. Walk through your relationships like you've already outgrown the someone you used to be. Walk through your decisions like you've already leveled up your soul. Because you did. You're not just the version that escaped, you're the version that ascended. And that ascending, that's your new signature. They may still aim, but their aim doesn't matter. They may still plan, but your plan exists in a space they cannot see. They may still lie, but your elevation rewrote the truth. You left the track. You climbed the ladder. You reached the summit. From there, the heights don't fear the fall. From there, you don't pray to survive, you pray to thrive. From there, you don't ask, will I make it? You say, where am I going next? Because you aren't just walking out of the valley. You're stepping into the mountaintop, and once you get there, the valley can't touch you. The echoes of the valley fade. The weapons of the valley malfunction. You're in a new league. You're in a new altitude. You're in a place where your past battles feel like dress rehearsals, and your future victories are the main stage. So remember, you didn't dodge the hit, you out-climbed the scope. You didn't survive by reaction, you thrived by elevation. You didn't just make it, you made it upwards. And that's not luck, that's legacy. Thirteenthly, chosen ones. You may have walked into the room smiling. You may have carried an air of composure that masked the turbulence beneath. But few know what you held inside. Few know how you braced yourself in the darkness. Few understand the weight of that pause right before the collapse. Because you were the only one who truly caught the reflection of almost gone. They looked at you and saw victory, but you knew the storm that had already come and gone. They watched you stand tall and assumed you were untouched, but you felt the tremor in your spirit. You are the only one who remembers the moment you realized it could have ended. You are the only one who grasped how delicate the thread was that held you together. You are the only one who sensed how close the blow came. You are the only one who shivered at the memory of the shot that never landed. Others saw you breathe, but you remember the moment when your breath froze. They heard your laughter, but you recollect the night when your laughter threatened to die. You were in that room. You were on that highway. You were in that relationship. You were in that job. You were in that conversation. And in the silent seconds, you didn't tell a soul. You heard the hammer of destiny swing toward you. And you prayed, if I must fall, let it fall with meaning. But you, Lord, let me stand. That prayer was whispered when no one's lips were moving. That prayer echoed when no one's ears could hear. That prayer held the place of your vulnerability. And it. See, survival looks easy till you remember the nights when it wasn't. The nights you counted the cost, the nights you weighed your value, the nights you looked at the difference between the person you were and the person you were becoming and wondered if you'd ever arrive. You are the only one who knows how heavy that transition felt. Because you were bridging the version that got wounded and the version that won. When the danger came, you expected it to show up loud. You expected it to announce itself. But this one didn't. It crept like water under a door. It whispered like wind through a crack. It looked like business as usual until the fall. And you recognized the shift. You recognized the tilting of the floor. You recognized the betrayal in a smile you trusted. You recognized the breath you held that said, don't step forward, don't speak, don't stay. But you did step, and you did speak, and you did stay because something better than your fear rose inside you. Faith. You walked through the chapters. No one will read. You stayed in the rooms. No one will enter. You wrestled in the arena. No one watched. And you're still here. But you didn't just outlive the moment, you outlived the mindset. You are the only one who understood how close you came to being a footnote. You are the only one who remembered dust settling when you thought it might be you lying there. You saw the gun being cocked. You didn't see the flash. You heard the hush before the explosion. You felt the blank second when reality pivoted. That moment doesn't vanish because you smiled after it. That moment stays lodged in the marrow of your memory. Your survival is a miracle, but the part no one sees is the preparation your soul went through. When the enemy targeted you, it didn't only aim at your body, it aimed at your reputation. It aimed at your mind. It aimed at your destiny. He never realized you were already operating on a different plane. And you were fighting battles before the blow fell. Your spirit was reading the script. Your intuition was rewriting the scene. Your faith was building the braces beneath the floorboards that the trap tried to collapse. You stood while others shook. You quieted when others shouted. You prayed when others quit. Let's face it, no one honored the version of you who drafted your eulogy in private and tore it up again in confidence. No one saw the inside of your raw reflection. No one watched you carry the weight of I might not make it and then set it down to say, but I will. And God watched. God saw your hidden courtroom. God heard your silent verdict. I will stand. So when the world saw your rising, it marveled. But you knew the aversion in your own eyes. You knew empty chairs in your life that had once cheered you. You knew the quiet when you required noise. You knew betrayal when you still trusted. And in your knowing, you built a new platform. You refused the old applause. You traded the old circle. You rewrote the old reaction. Because you are the only one who understood how serious the near-out miss was. And because you understood, you changed the outcome. They'll cheer your survival, but you'll know this. Your survival wasn't enough unless you walked into your calling. You didn't just dodge the hit, you accepted the upgrade. You didn't just escape the narrative, you started writing a new one. You carried inside you a silent promise. Because I was almost taken out, no one's taking me out again. Until I've spoken every word I was meant to speak. Until I've reached every person I was meant to reach. Until I've built every bridge I was meant to build. And that promise, it needs companions who knew it from the start. It's not meant for bystanders. It's meant for overcomers. It's meant for faithful. It's meant for those who saw the last scene but chose to skip forward. Your survival is your testimony, but knowing what you almost lost is your legacy. They'll say you're lucky, but you'll know you were refined. They'll say you were spared. But you'll know you were sponsored. They'll say you were blessed. And you'll answer, I was commissioned. You held on when you had no visible reason. You stayed when you had no guaranteed outcome. You trusted when you had no certified proof. And in that void, you turned the crisis into a crucible. Now you walk in clarity. Now you stand in conviction. Now you speak with authority, because you are the one who knows the number of nights you swallowed fear. Because you are the one who remembers the moment you almost told yourself, I can't, and then you replaced it with, I must. Everybody sees your morning, but you remember your midnight. Everybody sees you smile now, but you remember how many times you held back tears you didn't have the right for. Everybody sees your victory lap, but you remember how many times you prepared for cancellation? And in that remembrance, you found your power. You are not defined by the attack that tried to end you. You are defined by the persistence that didn't let it. You are not just a survivor. You are the architect of your resurgence. No one else will ever fully grasp what you walked through. That's okay. They didn't need to. You did, because your story required your understanding first. Because while they were debating whether you'd make it, you were assembling the blueprint of how you'd outlive it and the world. It doesn't applaud the plan. It suffers the surprise when the plan arrives. So walk intentionally, walk thoughtfully, walk with the awareness that you carried the near Ocmus inside you before you ever carried the wind. And that awareness, it's holy, because turbulence doesn't define you. Your response does, because the blade didn't land where it aimed. Your strength did, because the storm didn't destroy you. You declared, because the bullet missed. Your assignment stood. And you are the one who knows, not just that you were almost gone, but that you weren't. And because you weren't, everything in you answers differently. You carry urgency. You carry clarity. You carry legacy. You don't behave like someone who just made it. You behave like someone who was sent, because you were. And now that you know what it felt like to almost end, you walk like you intend to finish. You guard like you intend to keep. You live like you intend to last. That's your new posture. That's your new attitude. That's your new era. So stand up, not just tall, wounded, but whole. Stand not just proud, but prepared of a why, having not come or having not. Stand not just relieved, but resolute. Because the nearly there, the just barely, the almost fallen, they were the refining fire that molded you. And now you're the walking miracle that others will one day celebrate. But you already understood it. You already honored it. You already won it. And that is why you're still here. Finally, O chosen ones, listen to me. This is the moment where the story flips. This is the moment where the Nero miss doesn't just end. It begins, because that bullet you think nearly hit you, it didn't come to kill you. It came to awaken you. You heard it right. It wasn't intended for your funeral. It was meant for your inauguration. It wasn't aimed to cancel your journey. It was aimed to catalyze your emergence. That blow, that betrayal, that crisis, it was not the end of you. It was the wake-up call for what you were meant to become. Let me say it clearly. Sometimes the danger you encounter has less to do with your death and more to do with your birth. You walked into an attack. It looked real. It hurt. It shook the landscape of your heart. It pulled you off the track you had assumed you were on. It made you question your value, your future, your direction. You thought you were failing. You thought you were losing. You thought the shot had scored. But then you realize you're still breathing. And more than that, you're different. You survived. And in surviving, you awakened. Awakening is not just the relief after danger. It's the revelation that the danger was the alarm, not the outcome. You see, when you are asleep in a place of comfort, you don't hear the warnings. You dream your life away. You walk routines that were meant to pass, not to last. You live below your capacity until something scares you upright. And what happened to you? Something like that. Something shook you. Something awakened the version of you that had been dormant, diluted, worn out, hidden by too many yesterdays and compromises. That shot didn't bruise you, it woke you. It didn't reduce your capacity, it expanded your potential. It didn't catch you off guard, it got you ready. Listen, some people think they're awakened because they got a miracle. Others believe they get miracles because they were chosen peaceful. But you were chosen to get up through the shock and remain to build. This is your awakening narrative. The moment between the shot being fired and you continuing in your destiny, that's where God met you. It's in the silent almost when you realize you could have lost it all. But didn't that your transformation began? So many nights you held your breath, whispered prayers, questioned your path. So many days you walked around with a wound. No one saw a fear. No one asked about a silence. No one heard that silence. That's when God was speaking to you. That hesitation, that's when God was positioning you. Everything that looked like the end became the threshold. Everything that looked like closing doors became the hallway to your next assignment. Everything you ran from became the foundation you walked on. Your awakening is not in the escape, it's in the upgrade. Don't just celebrate being safe, celebrate being set free with purpose. You changed, and that's why the attack missed you. Because God doesn't waste a blow when He has a plan. He doesn't wake you for no reason. He doesn't call you to survive without meaning. You were woken, not wounded. Waking up feels messy though. It's not all clean and shiny. There's ashes and broken glass and shards of identity everywhere. But that debris isn't your prison, it's the material of your rebirth. The broken mirror of your former self becomes the lens of your new vision. You might look around and think, I survived, I'm okay, but it's not enough. You need to realize, I'm awakened, I'm ready. Because the awakened don't just live, they lead. They don't just react, they redesign. They don't just escape, they ascend. The shot didn't land to kill you, it landed to launch you. It was the wake-up alarm in a world that expected you to stay asleep. It was the vibration beneath the floorboards of your complacency. It was the whisper beneath the roar of your routine. And when you woke as awkward, as shaken, as raw as you were, you didn't just resume life. You reprioritized life. You stopped living for comfort. You stopped living for approval. You stopped living for visibility. You started living for purpose. You started living for impact. You started living for legacy. Now, let me ask you, what did you learn from the wake? Maybe you learned to value your voice. Maybe you learned to protect your time. Maybe you learned to refuse small access. Maybe you learned that your almost moment isn't about what you lost. It's about what you found. The awakened know this. Your past almost failure becomes tomorrow's testimony. Your encounter with elimination becomes your elevation. Your brush with breakdown becomes your breakthrough. And you carry that inside you, not like a scar of shame, but like a badge of honor. A titanium scar, unbreakable. You are changed. Your trajectory is changed. Your presence is changed. And yes, people may see you and say, he made it. But you know the truth, you woke up. Stay awake now. Because the rest of your story isn't about surviving, it's about stepping into the version of you that can't be touched by what touched the old you. This is your honor. These scars speak of a season of awakening. These days you walk with sway, not because you forgot the danger, but because you remember the purpose that saved you. And the wounded version of you would have settled for, I'm still here. The awakened version of you says, I have arrived and I will advance. You don't live under the shadow of that bullet. You live under the banner of your calling, where once you counted the seconds until the blow, now you count the lives you'll impact with your yes. Where once you nearly surrendered, now you serve with surrendered hands. Where once you were nearly broken, now you build with the pieces. So honor the shot, honor the escape, celebrate the awakening. Don't just tell the story of how you almost lost, it's time to tell the story of how you won. And your victory isn't an endpoint, it's a new beginning. Because you were not just spared, you were sent. You were not just spared, you were set up. You were not just saved, you were activated. Your almost became your announcement. Your surviving became your serving. Your waking up became your waking others. Now you walk among people who never felt the bullet. They think you're lucky, but you know you're woken. You're walking for those who couldn't walk away. You're standing for those who were told to kneel. You're speaking for those whose voice was drowned. You're living for those whose life was stolen. You're ready for the mission because you came out of the fire and still look like purpose. And listen, the awakened sometimes feel alone because when you lift off from the old zone, some folks don't come with you. That's okay. This isn't a party for the crowd. It's a movement for the called. You don't need everyone in the room. You only need the right ones. The ones who see you woke, not wounded. So stay awake, stay alert, stay on course, because there's no resting after awakening, there's rising. There's no finishing after surviving, there's functioning in freedom. There's no simple return to normal, there's launch into legacy. And now you carry a mantle, not of victim, not of survivor, but a victor. Because the bullet didn't land and the kingdom celebrated, the workshop of your soul wasn't destroyed, it was refurbished. The plan they fired at you didn't succeed, it advanced you. You don't walk away with just a story, you walk away with a mandate. You're awakened for the world, you're mobilized for the mission, you're equipped for the next chapter. So stand now, not just relieved, but resolved. Not just blessed, but commissioned. Not just alive, but activated. And when the world marvels that you're still here, let them know I'm here because I woke up. I'm here because I stood. I'm here because I answered. And I'm still here because I will. Because the bullet didn't kill me, it made me. And this is just the beginning. As we come to the end of today's message, my dear friend, allow me to bring this full circle, because your story is not just about escape, it's about emergence. It's not only about survival, it's about sovereignty. You are the walking miracle. The universe cannot break. You didn't just survive the bullet that was aimed at you. You were upgraded while the world watched you breathe. You were purified while the enemy believed you were defeated. You were revealed while your circle thought you were lost. Every near-op miss was an evolution. Every trap that failed turned into your refinery. Every attack that missed constructed your armor. You walked through the fire, and the fire became your furnace. You walked past the storm, and the storm became your signal to rise. You walked into the desert, and the desert became your training ground. And now you're no longer the person who could be hit. You're the vessel that no weapon can touch. That is your miracle. The universe tried to bend you. It tried to slope you. It tried to nuance you into submission. But you bent for God, not for the world. And because you bent for the divine, you are now unbreakable to the designs of the temporal. Look around. Think back. The battle lines were drawn. The aim was true, the arena ready, the weapons loaded, and yet you're standing. More than that, you're standing refined. The enemy thought he would shut down your voice. He thought he would reduce your power. He thought he would erase your footprint, but the universe mismeasured you. He used instruments meant for vulnerability on one who was built for resurrection. He calibrated his strategy for a man still under construction. He aimed at the version you used to be, not the version you've become. You upgraded, you evolved, you transcended. And when you transcend the trap, the trap loses aim. When you transcend the shooter loses sight. When you transcend the timeline collapses. Now the trap lies unused. The shooter reloads in frustration. The timeline rewinds in confusion, and you move forward. You move forward with the certainty of one who survived what looked unstoppable, with the clarity of one who knew the shot was about more than the wound, with the peace of one who recognized the purpose under the assault. You carry scars, yes, but they are the marks of survival, not the stamps of shame. You carry wisdom, yes, but it didn't come from textbooks. It came from trenches. You carry authority, yes, but it doesn't roar. It resonates. You are the miracle walking through the marketplace of brokenness and still shining because your light didn't flicker, it found its source. The universe cannot break you because you belong to a frequency it cannot tune into. It cannot correspond to a wavelength it cannot measure. It cannot silence a voice it cannot comprehend. You are unbreakable. Let the world speak of almost you. The times the shot missed you, you'll tell of evolved the times you rose anyway. Let them talk. Escape you live, elevation. Let them say luck, legacy. Let them say survivor, you declare sovereign. In every room you enter, you carry gravity. Not because you fear the fall, but because you know you've already risen. Not because you seek approval, but because you know your maker approves. Not because you need safety, but because you embody purpose. When someone expected you to crumble, they were surprised when you smiled. When someone expected your collapse, they were shocked when you prayed. When someone expected your silence, they were startled when you declared, because your survival was only the beginning. Now you're walking proof that the plans of the enemy aren't final when the promise of God is present. You are proof that what was aimed to destroy is sometimes delivered to deploy. You are proof that the missile that missed you didn't just pass, it propelled you. You are proof that the storm you escaped wasn't a defeat, it was your banner. And your banner waves not just over you, but for those behind you, for those who will follow your steps, for those who will recognize what you were nearly stolen from and what you were chosen for. You are the walking miracle. The universe cannot break. No chain can hold you. No arrow can reach you. No lie can define you. No fear can replace you. You are locked in purpose. You are seated in authority. You are rooted in identity. Walk now in the confidence of one who survived every test of the enemy, not because he was stronger, but because he was aligned. Not because he was unaffected, but because he was awakened. The universe may try to bend circumstances, twist plot lines, and rewrite outcomes. But you are the constant, the unshakable, the unbreakable. When they ask, how did you do it? You'll answer, I wasn't just lucky, I was chosen. I wasn't just saved, I was commissioned. And when they ask, why are you still here? You'll say, because I still have work to do. And when they ask, why are you so calm? You'll say, because I've seen the valley and now I'm living on the mountaintop. Your life is no longer about avoiding the next blow. It's about being the blueprint for people who thought their fall would define them. Your story is no longer about escaping. They will teach it as exalting. Your journey is no longer about recovery. They will speak of resurrection, and you will live that every single day. Today is not the chapter where you catch up. Today is the chapter where you step in. Today is the chapter where they watch the miracle walk right through the storm, not because the storm ended, but because the storm became the runway. You don't walk away fretful. You walk away full. You don't walk away uncertain. You walk away certain. You don't walk away hidden. You walk away highlighted. You don't walk away broken. You walk away bejeweled. Deep down you know this. The bullet missed you and you were meant to fly. The world tried to break you and you were meant to become. The enemy aimed to finish you and God aimed to launch you. So walk miracle. Walk with your head high. your steps bold, your spirit loud in silence. Because you are the walking miracle the universe cannot break. And it's time the world knew. Finally, thank you for staying with us until the very end of today's message. If something in this word inspired you, encouraged you, or helped you stand a little taller in your journey, we're deeply grateful. We humbly invite you to take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a word of hope right now. Your prayers, your comments, and your presence here are a blessing to us in ways words can't fully express. You're not just a viewer, you're part of this spiritual family. We'd love to hear from you. So drop a comment below and let us know what part of this message spoke to your heart today. May the Lord surround you with His grace, strengthen you for every step ahead, and bless the work of your hands in ways only He can. Amen.